we're back with another episode from My Hero Academia, and this is pretty much just the episode where Midoriya Deku is talking to the previous wielders of One for All, and this is pretty integral because this is pretty much the very start of Deku going on his journey of becoming essentially what is a vigilante. He doesn't technically work for the Hero Society. He's not at the school anymore. He's completely abandoned that. He does so at the very end of the episode. He's basically going to go off and do hero work as a vigilante, but obviously he's a hero. He's not, trying to hurt anybody. He's just, running around for the sake of making sure that he's the only one being targeted because, Shigaraki and All for One are trying to go after him and One for All. So he has to abandon his friends, he has to abandon his school, he has to abandon his family, all for the sake of the fact that he's going to do hero work as a vigilante and try to bring out those who are trying to go after him. That's basically the whole plan of what's going on. And in the episode when he talks to the previous wielders of One for All, we find out the truth and the reality of One for All and why All Might was able to have it for so long. And we learn what happened to the fourth wielder of One for All, and he died of old age. And the reason why that's so surprising is because they realize why it was so surprising why the fourth died of old age. Meanwhile, All Might had it for like 40 years. The fourth wielder had it for 18 years. And the reality is, it's because All Might didn't have a quirk. And that's when they realized that if you have a quirk, your lifespan is shortened, because we learned that All for One, when he uses other people's quirks, he's able to somehow feel their consciousness. He's able to feel, their emotions and what they're thinking and what they're saying inside of his brain, inside of his head. And essentially that's the same thing that's happening with One for All, because if you have all these people collectively putting their quirks all into one singular place, a body isn't going to be able to withstand all those quirks all at once, because they just have too many quirks at once, especially if they already have one of their own. If they essentially have two quirks, and one of those quirks is a combination of multiple of them, their body just isn't going to be able to withstand the pressure and the strain that having a One for All is doing. Meanwhile, we have, All Might, who had it for 40 years, and it's because he didn't have a quirk that he was able to have it for so long. And it was fate that brought All Might and Midoriya together, and Midoriya not having a quirk that is allowing him to be able to bring out the fullest power of One for All and all of the previous users' quirks, excuse me. And I don't know, I sort of thought about this more because I already read ahead in the manga. I've said this a couple of times before. I read a little bit ahead in the manga, and the point of where I stopped in the manga and I started waiting for it to get adapted in the anime was basically the Lady Nagant fight versus Midoriya. That's where I stopped, which we're probably going to be seeing in the next couple of episodes. There's only a few weeks left, considering that we're almost done with the season. Again, I have no idea what they're going to do, but however, I started thinking about this more, as the episode was, starting and I was, getting ready to watch it. And I was a little conflicted about this whole thing where it's yeah, it was, destined for Midoriya to, it was fate, it was destiny that Midoriya was actually the final wielder of One for All, because, he didn't have a quirk, and they realized, hey, if someone doesn't have a quirk, they can actually bring out the fullest abilities of this quirk that was created by All for One, and that was given to All for One's quirkless younger brother, and all that. I started thinking about it in the sense of, the thing that makes Spider-Man so special in Marvel Comics is the fact that Spider-Man can essentially be anybody. There are stories where they try to make it seem like it was his destiny to become Spider-Man and get bitten by the spider so he gets the powers, but they don't usually do very well. And people don't usually really like them all too much. So I started thinking about it the same way with Midoriya. They try to make it seem like it was his destiny to get One for All and eventually end up becoming the greatest hero to ever exist in the Hero Society and all this stuff. And I thought about it more, and I think here it just works a little bit better, considering that the whole entire Hero Society is filled with people with quirks, right? And Deku is the one exception of someone in modern society for the world of My Hero Academia that doesn't have a quirk. And he was the one specifically chosen by someone else who also didn't have a quirk, that being All Might, to eventually end up getting those powers. So I think here it just ends up making more sense. And I think it also just kind of ends up feeling more coincidental. Like, All Might could have easily chosen somebody else. He could have chosen Bakugo. He could have ended up choosing Todoroki. He literally could have ended up choosing anybody else. But by a sudden twist of fate and coincidence, it ended up being Deku, another person who also ended up being quirkless. And I think here it makes more sense than it does with Spider-Man, because, you know, with Spider-Man, he wears the mask. You don't ever see who's under the mask, and that's what makes him so special as a hero, because you can imagine yourself in that costume. You can imagine yourself being Spider-Man, no matter your race, religion, color, creed, or sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. You can imagine yourself in that situation. Whereas with Deku, I think it makes more sense, and I like it here, just because it just fits a lot more in context. But I like seeing the other wielders. I like, you know, the fact that now Midoriya is going to be able to use the other wielders' quirks a lot more often. It makes him kind of overpowered because he has all these powers, but he has to consciously think about which one of the quirks he's going to be using, and he still hasn't fully accustomed to using them yet. You know, he's barely able to fully use Black Whips because he's capable to right now. So we're only going to have to wait and see what other abilities he's going to get. I know some of them, you know, a couple of the other ones that he has, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens. I like how there are two wielders who are in the episode are not wanting to talk with him, and it's because the wielders are trying, the previous wielders are trying to tell him that Tomono Shigaraki is a guy who can't be saved, and because he's a guy who can't be saved, he has to be stopped, because he is now the, you know, future successor of All For One. All For One is going to eventually end up taking control of his body and his mind, and he's going to go after One For All. And if he does that, he's going to basically be completely unstoppable. So what is there to do other than basically kill him? And that's what they ask him to do. You know, are you going to be able to kill Tomono Shigaraki? And that's what Nanashimura is the one who asked him the question. Can you actually do it? Because this isn't just a request. They're not asking him to do it. They're telling him that he has to do it. And they do this basically to kind of just judge his resolve, right? Like, is he going to be able to do it? And his answer is pretty much just, that's what the quirk seemed to be originally created for, and that's what it was becoming for so many years through so many successors. But then we had All Might, who pretty much changed the perception of what One For All was supposed to be. Because he used One For All to give people hope. He brought the smile upon people's faces. He changed the complete perception of what One For All was supposed to be for Deku. And Deku is pretty much essentially trying to do the same thing for the previous wielders who are now speaking with him in his mind. And pretty much what he's going to do is, he's not going to try to stop and save Tomono Shigaraki. He's going to try to save that little kid who lost everything the day that he awokened to his quirks. That's who he's going to go and try to save. Now, whether or not that's going to end up leading to him actually being able to do so, or whether or not he's going to actually end up being forced to have to end up killing Shigaraki anyways, we'll have to wait and see until that eventually ends up happening. I don't think it's even happened in the manga, because considering that we haven't even seen Deku's dad, and Horikoshi apparently is like talking about how he's going to end up showing up sooner or later in the manga, and I don't think he has yet. Even though, honestly, in my opinion, that doesn't really matter, but that's besides neither here or there. Yeah, that's pretty much just what ends up happening within the episode. He's communicating with the previous wielders of All For One. They test his resolve, he gives them his answer, and pretty much from this point forward, you know, Deku's going to go and do his own thing. He's going to start his Vigilante arc, and he's going to start his journey of what he said in the beginning of the first episode of the series, at the very start. This is the story of how he became the #1 hero. This is the story of how he became the best hero and all that good stuff. Anyways, this is the start of it. This is the Vigilante arc stuff that's going to be happening with Midoriya. We're going to have to wait and see what ends up happening. because I only know so much because, like I said, I only read so far forward into the manga, and I don't think I want to read any more than what I already have. I kind of want to wait until it's, like, officially animated and then maybe continue on forward a little bit. I have no idea. I guess we'll just wait and see how I feel about it. Anyways, this was a great episode, right? I like how they test his resolve. I love how they test his ideologies. I like how they know what he's feeling. They knew what he felt within that moment when he saw Shigaraki, and they try to tell him that he can't do it, but he still is insisting on trying to do that anyways. Meanwhile, we still, like I said, we have two previous wielders who are not wanting to help him out, and it's because they truly don't really agree with what Midoriya wants to do. They don't agree with what he's trying to accomplish. They think that because Shigaraki has gone this far, there's no redeeming him and there's no saving him, no matter what they try to do. So the only thing that's left for them to do is to go ahead and kill him. And so they turn their faces, they turn their backs against him. You know, that's what they end up doing. But eventually they're gonna have to open up anyways, because if he doesn't have their quirks, then he's basically just gonna be weaker, right? He's gonna have a less likely chance to be able to stopping All For One and Shigaraki. So they're gonna have to, you know, face him eventually. So I like at the very end as well how he admits to his entire classroom that All For One is after him, Shigaraki is after him, and that One For All is his quirk, right? And he got it from All Might. I like how he explains them all to a personalized letter. I would assume that each letter is like personalized to each specific person that he left it to. And then I also like how at the very end as well, when they have that conference with Endeavor and Best Genius and Hawks, everyone is basically wanting to hear the thing that they want to hear. They want to hear that, you know, it wasn't their fault, it wasn't this and that, and yada yada. But they know and they realize that they can't hide their mistakes. They can't just pretend that what happened didn't happen. So Endeavor has to admit that Toya Todoroki is Dabi, and that it was essentially his fault. He had to reveal his family's dark secrets. You know, the skeletons in the closet. He has to admit all of that. And the same thing with Hawks as well. That although the Best Genius thing that Dabi talked about in that video that was public to the entire viewing audience on television to see, that was fake because, you know, Best Genius pretended to be dead. What he said about his father was actually true. And also that he had to kill a villain that was running away. And like I said, if the public is angry about Hawks doing that, then I think I've said this before, I think it's kind of lame, because considering that he actually gives a proper explanation as to why he did it. He feels remorse about it, but he only did it because if Twice had ran off and like activated his quirk and was able to do what he was capable of being able to do, then the damage would have been so much worse. So yeah, like, he did what he had to do. He didn't want to do it, but he had to. And that's, you know, the sacrifice that comes to being a hero. You can't save everybody, and you can't allow every villain to, you know, face justice. It just is what it is, right? But we're going to have to wait and see what ends up happening in the future episodes. We're going to have to see how well it's animated, how well it's adapted. And, yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I had a lot more to say about this episode than I thought I did. I guess I kind of just been stalling and kind of been talking about the same thing. I apologize for that. Anyways, that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic day. I'm out. Peace.